like to call the meeting to order. The hour of 9:45 a.m. arrival. This is the Kane County Board meeting of October 8th, 2019. I'd like to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Gillen. Present. Guerrero. Yes. Davis.
Here.
Glass.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Andrews. Here. O'Shea.
Here.
Dickbach.
Here.
Kenyon.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
Kobe.
Here.
Leonard.
Here.
Lewis. Martin.
Here.
Molina. President. Sanchez.
Here.
Shevlo.
Here.
Sola. Here. Starrett. Surges.
Yes.
Thomas. Here. Weber.
Here.
Wagner. Here. Mooney. Here.
We have a quorum. I'd like to welcome our state's attorney. Thank you to Mr. McMahon for coming today. Would you please turn off cell phones to avoid distractions over the next hour and a half? On the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to ask Ms. Joan Seaman with the Kane County Association of Home and Community Education to come to the microphone to lead us in the prayer. Ms. Seaman.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. I'd like to ask Jeff Frazier, lead pastor at Chapel Street Church in Geneva, Illinois, to come to the microphone to lead us in prayer. Pastor Frazier was the teaching pastor prior to his role of lead pastor, worked with youth ministry for 15 years. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here. Let's bow together. Father in heaven, we come before you in humility and expectation this morning. We acknowledge that you are the author of all life and wisdom, and so we ask for your wisdom and guidance as we begin this meeting today. Grant our leaders grace to engage in meaningful discussion. Allow the leaders of our county to seek to understand each other as much as they seek to be understood. Give them discernment as they make decisions for the good of our communities. Give them patience as they work through difficult problems together. Strengthen the bonds of fellowship as a board of fellow servants. Encourage them when they grow weary or they feel unappreciated. Remind them often that all they do this day and all they accomplish this year is not for themselves, but for the people of this community and for the glory of your name. We ask this in your name, O Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the September 10th, 2019 meeting. So moved by Mr. Lee, second by Mr. Sanchez. Are there any thoughts, comments, or changes? Mr. Pius?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a note on page 5 that I want to make note that it is not board member O'Shea and Turgis that abstained. Mr. O'Shea, please start with credit. And then phonetic spelling of my name on page 7. Same.
Any other comments or changes? Okay, if not, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Speakers on agenda, non-agenda items. Let's just read what I do at every meeting. As a matter of protocol, individuals who have registered to speak in this case, non-agenda items are allowed 3 minutes with total public comment time limited to 30 minutes. We ask that speakers refrain from statements, remarks, or comment that might become disruptions to the comments as they come to work, which might cause disturbances. I understand that we have one speaker who signed up this morning, Jeff Ward. If you'd like to come forward.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Ward, 189 Andy Lane, Geneva, Illinois. Again, thank you for allowing me to speak. And I also want to thank this body for calling the state's attorney's office in to answer questions, and some tough questions, about the sexual harassment that I have exposed. I think it's also fascinating that neither Joe McMahon or Joe Lola showed up for that. They threw Michelle Mearman and Aaron Brady to the wolves, but that's par for the course. They also tried to make it sound like this was the only case of sexual harassment, the 255 pages I'm trying to get. That is not nearly the case. It was institutionalized sexual harassment with a wink and a nod. I've covered a number of the other instances here, and I've covered them in my columns. I'm simply focusing on this particular case because it's the most egregious and it makes it clearer for the courts to deal with. They also mentioned the prosecutor was disciplined, and they thought that would be the end. We released the discipline. They released 1.5 pages out of 255 pages. And the discipline was moving the prosecutor, after he'd been doing this for 6 to 8 years, across the office. Is that really the answer to sexual harassment? As a result, the ASA who brought this story to me quit because of that discipline. Kane County State's Attorney's Office continues to argue confidentiality. Though I know the names of the victims, I've never asked for them. That's confidentiality. If these documents come out without the names, not even the board is going to know who the victims were, much less the public. That's confidentiality. Not even the KCSAO believes that own argument here. And I'm going to keep coming back to this because it's so critical for journalists. I mean, a great many of you have come to me when you want a story to come out or you want something covered. But the case, Joe McMahon and Joe Alvis keep harping on the fact that this is the Attorney General's ruling is an opinion and not a ruling, but it's not. Imagine what would happen if every entity knew all they have to do is refuse a FOIA request, lose an appeal, and say, you know what, even if the Attorney General says you're wrong, we're not going to turn it over because the journalists and the papers are going to have to pay $377 a pop in Kane County to file a lawsuit to get them to honor the FOIA statute. This kind of, I don't even know what to call it, dragging their feet will destroy the FOIA statute. Who's going to honor a FOIA request if there's no teeth in it? And it's particularly egregious when it occurs at the hands of the people not only sworn to uphold the law, but prosecute the law. Public documents. I learned more about FOIAs than I thought I knew it all. I did not. Public documents, and these are public documents. They're public documents. The second the ink hits the paper, are presumed to be discoverable. That is the law. The next time you see me, and I know you can't wait, this case will likely be adjudicated barring any delays. But, my best bet is when I win, and I will win, they'll simply appeal to drag their feet even longer. So I'm grateful that some of you had the temerity to call the state's attorneys in and get them to answer some questions. I'd like to see you press that home. I'd like to see you continue to do the right thing. Thank you again.
Thank you. Are there any other people in the audience, public, who would like to speak this morning? Seeing none, go on to new and unfinished business presentations and discussions. Resolution 19330, recognizing October as Kane County Association for Home and Community Education Month. I'd like to invite Joan Seaman and her friend Joan to come forward, along with board member Deborah Allen. Be recognized with October as Home Community Education Month. Joan, this is what we're trying to make up for not giving you a plaque last year for the 100th year that your organization has been recognized. So, Ms. Allen.
Sure. Mark, can I get a microphone? Good morning, everyone. In 1915, a number of neighbors got together and formed the Illinois Home Bureau Federation. And the University of Illinois got involved by selecting an advisor to help with the mission, which was to improve rural living and family and community life. The name may have changed through time, but it is now called the Kane County Association for Home and Community Education. It's housed at the U of I Extension office over on Randall Road, and as the chairman just said, last year was their 100th anniversary. So 101 years going strong. That's part of the resolution. I want to read part. Whereas this organization teaches by deeds more than words, with international studies and activities, by trading and selling locally grown perennials and inviting people to just come and walk the gardens, by recycling and reusing beyond the imaginations of ordinary mortals, by reminding us to be the first to say hello, sing in the shower, and to buy whatever kids are selling on card tables in their front yards, and to never refuse homemade brownies, and to never waste an opportunity to tell someone you love them. This is a group of people who always practice excellence and are determined to leave Kane County better than they found it. And whereas the Kane County Association for Home and Community Education is dedicated to addressing the issues of community outreach, cultural enrichment, family living, international study, public relations, and community involvement for the entire population of Kane County, regardless of race, color, national origin, sex, age, or creed. Now therefore be it resolved that the Kane County Board recognizes October as Kane County Association for Home and Community Education Month and congratulates them on their 101st successful year and thanks them for being our dedicated partner in nurturing and strengthening our home, Kane County. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Lausen and the Kane County Board for doing this for us every year. I don't know how many years I've been coming here, but I'll keep coming until, who knows, you know. I get too old. Also, I must say, next week is HCE week, and at our extension office on Thursday, October 17th, we're having Fun Day. So if you want to drop by and see what we do, the ladies will be there having fun and lunch, and we're having accordion player. It's actually our Oktoberfest also. So join us if you're in the area. You're more than welcome to visit. Thank you, Debbie, so much.
Thank you for being our partners. What time is it at?
We start at 10 o'clock, lunch at 11:30, and our program is at 12:30, I believe. We're having a professional German accordionist.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you.
Celeste reminds me that we need a motion and a second to approve Resolution 19330. May I have the motion, Ms. Allen? And yes, and second by Mr. Froz. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Next on number 19331, recognizing National 4-H Week from October 6th through the 12th, I'd like to invite Doris Braddock, the 4-H Youth Development Program Coordinator, to come forward to be recognized and accept this resolution designating the week of October 6th through 12th, 2019 as National 4-H Week. If I could have Mr. Kenyon and Ms. Bonicki come forward. We have a master, not only gardener, but farmer, and we have a person who's been devoted to land use, proper land use in Kane County for her entire career. So with that, I'll hand this to, could we have the microphone? I'm going to have, who would like to start? Maybe you can, okay?
This morning we're going to recognize National 4-H Week, October 6th through the 12th, whereas the Kane County Board is proud to honor the University of Illinois Extension 4-H Youth Development Program for providing exceptional educational programs to the youth in our community and throughout Illinois, and whereas
first and foremost want to thank the Chairman Lausen and County Board for recognizing us during this week, but even more so for supporting us in your budget with funds to the Extension Office, because all 4-H programs do lie under the land-grant university in their state. They come down the umbrella from USDA to the land grant to the Extension Office to the 4-H program. So a portion of those funds do help to support our program. And secondly, I'd like to thank all of those county board members and other county officials who help us out in the spring with our County Government Day, where 4-Hers get to shadow a government official for the morning, and then you join us for lunch. I hope to see many of you come next spring for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Doris, Mike, and Barb. May I have a motion and a second to approve number 19331? So moved by Mr. Kenyon, second by Ms. Wonicky. Any further discussion, comment? If not, all those in favor of approving this resolution say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. I'm going to defer time for the Chairman Short program today for discussions later on. On zoning petitions, I'd like to ask Development Committee Chairman John Martin to rise, discuss, and take us through the appropriate procedures to approve the zoning petitions on today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have 4 matters before us today. I note that there are speakers registered for each of the 4 matters, and I'm going to presume that they're only here to answer any questions that might otherwise come up unless you indicate to the contrary. The first is petition number 4471. I move its approval and request a second. All seconds. This is a petition filed by Miguel Batista regarding property commonly known as 7 North 416 Route 31 in St. Charles Township. The zoning board, it's a request to have a 5-year interim special use in the farming district to allow for the storage of landscaping vehicles and equipment. There were no objectors. The Regional Planning Commission was not jurisdictional in this matter. The zoning board voted approval, and the Development Committee voted approval. Questions or comments? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Allen? Aye. Barrero? Yes. Davis? Yes. Raz? Yes. Hanson? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. Hoshite? Yes. Iqbal? Yes. Kenyon? Yes. Caius? Yes. Hopi? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Martin?
Yes.
Molina? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Shefflo? Yes. Silva? Yes. Surges? Yes. Thomas? Weber? Yes. Wegman? Yes. Wonicky? Yes. That passes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Second matter is petition number 4517 in Dundee Township. I move its approval and request a second. All seconds. This is a petition filed by BDA Properties LLC regarding property commonly known as 37 West 507 Big Timber Road in Dundee Township. The action sought was rezoning from F District Farming to B3 District Business with a special use for outside storage. There were no objectors. It was not jurisdictional with the Regional Planning Commission. The zoning board approved the petition subject to adherence to 3 stipulations. The Development Committee also voted to approve with those 3 recommended stipulations included. Are there any comments or questions? Mr. Copier.
Is there a stipulation to the time frame? I think it's customary that we consider a time frame.
Well, there's
Is it a 3-year use, a 5-year use, or unlimited use?
That's correct.
I prefer implementing some type of a time frame, if it's possible.
Of course, are you seeking to amend that at this point in time?
I can't formulate an amendment. simply because I am not completely up to speed on the issue or the persons involved, so it may be not appropriate for me to make that amendment, other than is there a time frame, and if there isn't, everybody needs to be aware that that this property will be in its approved form in perpetuity.
Thank you. We have a speaker, the representative for the petitioner.
Thank you, Mr. Martin and board members. My name is Peter Bezos, an attorney for the petitioner. Let me speak to your question. So this is a requested rezoning to match what has been going on this property for about 32 years. The property is surrounded on the east, south, and west by the City of Elgin's industrial development. The trend of development in this area is all commercial industrial. My clients are sitting in the back. One of the buildings in the middle burned down, which brought all this to a forefront because they wanted to replace the building, and the zoning department pointed out that the zoning didn't match the historic use. They're ready to build a brand new building. In fact, they're going to start digging tomorrow if you approve this. There wouldn't be, we strongly request that there shouldn't be a limit on the special use. Again, it's historically used this way. There's industrial with outside storage all around us. I don't think the client would make the investment, respectfully.
That's the former Kellenberger property, is that correct?
It still is the Kellenberger property. BDA, I don't know what it's...
Thinking of the property across the street.
No, it is the Kellenberger property.
Okay, I rescind any concern.
Thank you.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Allen. Guerrero. Davis. Braz. Hanson. Hernandez. Bocheit. Iqbal. Kenyon. Caius. Kobe. Leonard. Martin. Molina. Sanchez. Shefflo. Silva. I thought I saw Sterrett. No? All right. Surgis. Thomas. Weber. Wegman. Wonicky. That passes.
Motion carries. Matters approved. Third matter is petition number 4518 in Hampshire Township. I move its approval and request a second. Mr. Kobe seconds. This is a petition filed by Thomas Getzelman and others regarding property commonly known as 14 North 144 Getzelman Road in Hampshire Township. The proposed rezoning being sought is from F District Farm to E1 District Estate Residential. There were no objectors to this. The Regional Planning Commission offered its approval, and the zoning board approved with certain stipulations being appended to that approval, which are set forth in your agenda. The Development Committee approved that petition adopting those same recommendations. Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Allen. Guerrero. Davis. Braz. Hanson. Hernandez. Bocheit. Iqbal. Kenyon. Caius. Kobe. Leonard. Martin. Molina. Sanchez. Shefflo. Silva. Surgis. Thomas. Weber. Wegman. Wonicky. It also passes.
Motion carries. The last matter is petition number 4519 in Blackbird Township. I move its approval, requesting a second. Mr. Fry seconds. This is a petition filed by Juan Guerrero regarding property commonly known as 3 South 530 Finney Road in Blackbird Township. The rezoning being sought is from F District Farming to R1 District 1 Family Residential. There were no objectors to this. There's no applicable regional planning commission jurisdiction. The zoning board approved it contingent upon adoption of 5 conditions. The zoning or the development committee also approved this subject to those same conditions. Any comments or questions? Very none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Allen. Guerrero. Davis. Raz. Hanson. Hernandez. Oshite. Iqbal. Kenyon. Caius. Copey. Leonard. Martin. Molina. Sanchez. Shefflo. Silva. Surges. Thomas. Weber. Wegman. Winnicke. Passes.
Motion carries. That concludes the petitions.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Surges.
Did Mr. Ellenberger leave already? I think he walked out. I just wanted to acknowledge that Mr. Ellenberger came up before the meeting and said, we understand with the minimal resolution that you asked for, but we did hear the committee and we are doing some additional landscaping on the parcel. I just thought that was very honorable to at least acknowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Surges. Okay, now consent agenda. Would anyone like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Mr. Hanson?
Morning, I'd like to remove...
would you please rise?
I'd like to remove resolution number 19-341.
19-341. Any others? Seeing none, I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exception of number 19-341. So moved by Mr. Frost, second by Mr. Leonard. Clerk will call the roll.
Ellen. Guerrero. Davis. Frost. Hanson. Hernandez. Oshite. Iqbal. Kenyon. Caius. Copey. Leonard. Martin. Molina. Sanchez. Shefflo. Silva. Surges. Thomas. Weber. Wegman. Winnicke. That passes.
Okay, that motion passes. May I have a motion and a second to discuss and potentially approve number 19-341? So moved by Mr. Hoshite, second by Ms. Allen. Mr. Hanson.
Good morning, thank you. I had questions about this resolution at the committee level, of which I'm not a serving member on. As it was originally constructed, it was written up as 2 years for an appropriation amount of $200,000. And I believe a motion in that committee failed for lack of a second, looking to amend that resolution that we're looking at today to 1 year for $100,000. Bigger picture concerns of mine are, I understand by state statute, engineering and architectural services don't have to be bid out. They can be awarded. As we face financial decisions for this upcoming budget, we look for ways to trim costs, giving essentially the as-needed $200,000 budget for a company that may or may not be looking to be as tight as they can for our budget is uncomfortable for me. They've been in this position for a long time. I'd like to see them, and I believe we're on record in that committee as like their sentiment to put this up for bid at the end of this one-year contract, regardless of what the appropriation amount is. I understand, according to Clark, is in the midst of completing the 5-year capital improvement plan, and so it's appropriate that they stay on board as our consultants for the remainder of this year. It's not that complicated to me. No one's been able to provide what I've asked for, which is what have they spent as needed over the course of their contract. Also, in the resolution, it talks about freezing the rates. There's no rate in here close to what they charge the county. So I would like to, this is a discussion, but I would like to make an amendment to strike the $200,000 appropriations amount in the resolution and have it read $100,000. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hanson makes a motion to amend number 19-341 to lower the amount in the agreement from $200,000 to $100,000. Is there a second? Second by Dr. Iqbal. Further discussion? Mr. Frost.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Hanson. I was involved in that discussion in admin, and I think we were focusing more on the length of the contract, and unfortunately, the amendment mentioned the 200,000 versus 100,000. I have no problem reducing it to 100,000, although I would have to defer to Mr. Sparks if we do have a 5-year plan, and we also have the multi-use building under work, so I would need to have advice from staff as to whether that budget would be adequate to get us through the next year. But I wholly agree with you as far as next August.
Okay, so focused on the question, Mr. Sparks, would you come forward? Focusing on the question at hand is not the putting it out to bid, but is lowering it from 200,000 to 100,000. About what has been the average annual expenditure for architectural services?
The average expenditure has been around $150,000 to $160,000 a year. It should be noted that this is the same amount that my predecessor asked for this current fiscal year. That's the same amount that I brought to the committee of the whole for the same professional services.
Thank you. Other comments? I think, Ms. Thomas, did I see your hand? Thank you. And then Ms. Allen.
So I'm just wondering why there was no explanation from the admin committee when I raised the question at exec about the discrepancy. It was as if no one remembered the actual resolution from exec, which outlines a contract of 2 years, 200,000, as Mr. Hanson has already said. And so I'm looking for an explanation because at exec there was no, it's like no one remembered what was in black and white at the September 11th resolution at admin. So why the discrepancy between admin and then exec, finance and then exec?
Mr. Sparks? Let's see. There was conversation in detail at finance. Then at exec, I thought the conclusion from that conversation was that that was basically a misprint of what the amount was because the intention of the resolution was to have it consistent with how it had been for maybe 2-3 years. I could be wrong about that, but that's my recollection of those two conversations. Anything, Mr. Sparks, to add to that?
The only thing that I can add to that is that over the past several years, the expenditures for this professional services has been in the range of $150,000, $160,000. And 1 year, we actually went over by $205,000. So I think this is an appropriate amount that we should use in order to utilize these services for the facilities that we have in place right now.
Thank you, Mr. Sparks. Ms. Allen.
Thank you, folks. Thank you for being interested in this. This is an up to amount, so it will be used as necessary. And as is so often the way with the buildings that we use and maintain, you just don't know what's going to happen. So I don't feel, even as chairman of admin, that I am in a position to second guess our staff. They're the ones who are here every day dealing with the things that come up. And I think we can trust our staff to say this is a reasonable amount. You know, there are these projects where you change out fiber, change out how a wall is set up, and sometimes you have the problems with fibers in January. And this, having an architect on staff is a cost-saving measure because instead of having to RFP that wall, you can go on the staff that you've got online, and they will use the amount. I think we've only gone over the 200,000 in the year when we started planning multi-use facilities, and some of the money that went into that planning got added to that particular year's plan. So I'm just asking that we trust staff to know what they're doing and go back on the plan.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Allen. Mr. Hanson. saw your hand up the whole time you were speaking, so Mr. Hanson, would you rise?
Thank you. Please. I guess the feeling that I have is this is the way we've always done it, isn't always appropriate, and if we've not spent $200,000 in the past for 1 year, why can't we reduce this to $100,000? And should they need more going forward, they can come and ask respective committees and the board for more appropriations. This is not complicated to me, and when it comes to, I don't think we need to call an architect if there's a broken pipe. I think it's a plumber, but this is kind of going a different direction than I was hoping that it would go, but I do trust staff. I just ask if $200,000 has not been an amount we needed before, then perhaps we cinch our belts, so to speak. If we limit them to a lower amount, and should they need more, they can ask for it. Reasonable.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Mr. Copey? I'm sorry, Mr. Sparks?
Well, I just want to respond real quick. We're currently right now over $100,000, so if you want to limit that to below that amount, then you're going to do a disservice to the county and to the facilities that we're trying to maintain.
Thank you, Mr. Sparks. Sorry, I heard a voice, but okay, Mr. Copey.
Thank you. I'm on the admin committee, and my understanding of the resolution from the black and white perspective was 2 years, 200,000. So my understanding was over the course of 2 years would be an expenditure of 200,000. So I did receive some comment from both Angie and Mr. Kayas in regards to there's some writing in between the lines that need to be clarified. And I think that's what this discussion is about, is to clarify that alleged discrepancy. If Logix takes place, if it is indeed black and white, 2 years for $200,000, then it would it would be the equivalent of 1 year for $100,000. So in an effort to clarify that 1 year for $100,000, we had amended the resolution to 1 year, which would essentially mean that we had amended the resolution to 1 year and $100,000. So we're going to vote, I assume, on whether we're going to clarify that point. So I'm in favor of the 1 year, 100,000.
Thank you, Mr. Copey. What's on the table right now for conversation is it's a 1 year that was already established during the committee work. Now it's an amendment to reduce it from 200 up to 200,000 to 100,000. Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sparks, if we do $100,000 and we end up needing more money, what's the process? What's that look like?
I believe I have to bring it back before the board to ask for additional funds to move forward with projects that may be in place or needed.
Okay. All right. Mr. Surges.
I don't have a problem with $200,000 if that's where we're traditionally heading, already over the $100,000. That just wouldn't make sense to continue to work with people coming back. But Matt, what I hear you saying is that we don't even have within this contract an hourly amount that whatever that base fee is that what I'm hearing? That it's not spelled out in there, and to that I would agree saying whether it's $20 an hour, $50 an hour, whatever it is, that amount should be within that contract. We should know the number of hours that are being used to do that. It's not I would be support making sure that was within.
The rates were attached to the amendment when it was first put through, yes.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, clerk will call the roll. This is for the amendment.
Ellen? No. Guerrero? Oh, she's not here. Davis?
No.
Raz? No. Hanson?
Yes.
Hernandez? Hoshite?
No.
Iqbal?
Yes.
Kenyon?
No.
Caius?
Yes.
Copey?
Yes.
Leonard?
No.
Martin?
No.
Molina? Sanchez?
No.
Shefflo is out. Silva?
Yes.
All right, Surgis? Thomas?
Yes.
Weber?
No.
Wegman? Yes. I'm sorry? Yes. And Winnicki?
The motion fails. We'll go back to the motion and the second to approve as it's written, number 19-341. Clerk, call the roll.
On the original, it is Allen? Barrero? Davist?
Yes.
Perez? Hanson? Hernandez? Yes, all right. Hoshite?
Yes.
Iqbal?
No.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Caius?
Yes.
Copey?
So.
Leonard?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Molina? Sanchez?
Yes.
Shefflo?
Yes.
The original, okay. Silva? Right. Surgis?
Yes.
Thomas? Weber?
Yes.
Wegman? No. And Winnicki? Yes.
Okay,
Passes.
the motion passes. Thank you for the work on the consent agenda. Now, may I have a motion and a second to discuss and approve number 19-362, authorizing 12-step plan to balance the 2020 general fund budget? So moved by Ms. Wonicky, second by Ms. Allen. Discussion? Thoughts or comments? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Allen? Barrero? Still not here. Davist?
Yes.
Fraz?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Hernandez? Yes. Hoshite?
Yes.
Iqbal?
Yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Caius? Copey? Leonard? Martin? Molina? Sanchez?
Yes.
Shefflo?
Yes.
Silva?
Yes.
Surgis?
Yes.
Thomas? I'm sorry? Okay. Weber?
Yes.
Wegman? Winnicki? And Ms. Ms. Barrero, did you want to vote on 362? No. All right.
So is that a no vote or do not want to vote?
No, I said no.
Okay,
No vote.
thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
Well, that passes.
The motion passes. May I have a motion and a second to discuss and approve number 19-363, authorizing change to RTA sales tax allocation miscellaneous revenue budget to close remaining fiscal year 2020 general revenue fund budget gap. So moved by Mr. Hoshite, Chairman of Finance and Budget. Second by Mr. Leonard. Discussion. Mr. Fries.
Yeah, transportation is on board with this change in the RT sales tax, but I do feel compelled as transportation chairman to make a few points here. Transportation has contributed about $1 million a year, even though our budget is uniquely separate from the county's main budget. We contributed about $1 million a year in one way or another to help balance recent budgets. The RTA sales tax is a transportation sales tax. It's not for transportation. DuPage County had 3 words. They lobbied for 3 words to be added to it, which opened the floodgates for people to really add on. So obviously that was disheartening to the transportation officials. KDOT has agreed once again to be a team player and work towards the 2020 budget deficit. Due to matching funds, for every dollar we give up, we're actually giving up about 4 because the state usually matches us about 3 to 1. So I do have to say on the record that we're here to be a team player today, but on the record I want to say that we will not be supporting this in the future, and we'll actually be vigorously opposing that should be brought up.
Thank you, Mr. Fries. Other discussion? Ms. Barrero.
Thank you. I appreciate, Chairman Frost, that you guys want to be a team player with this, but we've watched and we've seen our increase in expenses go up in the past 7 years that I've been on the board. And I've seen programs go that are social programs that are needed for the public and the public safety. And one is the GPS program. We lost that, can't get that grant back. Yes, Sheriff Kane has included portions of it, but we don't have that whole program back. The public only sees the GPS. We won't have the electronic monitoring side back. So there's a lot of things that we've lost. The child advocacy program has gone with the state's attorney's office. We've seen a lot of social services be thrown to the wayside because of cuts in our budget. And I think that we should increase the RTA sales tax, not by 7%, but by 13%, to help what we need so far is staffing throughout the county and throughout the judicial system. So that is what I propose, that we amend the resolution to state 13% instead of 7%. That would take us way over the top. If you want to negotiate that, I think that's fine, but I think 7%, I think we still should go for more. I really feel that other counties use these funds. McHenry County uses a portion of it. Lake County, DuPage uses the entire fund. Yeah, they might have added 3 words or whatever to use that fund, but they saw the need in it for their judicial and public safety side of their budget. We have the city of Aurora's home rule. We don't need to take care of their roads. That's one huge portion of our budget that is taken out that we would normally have to maintain. So we need to look at the whole budget, and I feel that we could increase the RTA by 13% rather than 7%. And that's how I'd like to amend it.
So there's a motion from Ms. Barrero to raise the RTA allocation to other than transportation from 7% to 13%. Is there a second? Seeing none, the motion fails for lack of second. Further discussion? Excuse me, Mr. Sanchez. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At Executive Committee, a lot of us were kind of relieved when Mr. Onzik presented the third option of increasing the RTA allocation. Thinking about it a lot, talking to him and talking to others, I have concerns about raising the allocation simply because where do we stop? So no matter what we do today, I think it bears having an important conversation on how we use those monies going forward. Do we cap it at a certain rate? Do we just rate into it every year when we need it? So that's something that I think we need to be definitely discussing through transportation and then onwards. The other thing is the specter of the CPI increase. That's something that we came very close to having to consider very seriously. Now with the third option, it seems there's a lot less pressure on that option. And this year, it wasn't a miracle that we figured out a way to balance the budget, but looking at the 12-step plan, you can see there's a lot of things that obviously were required just to finagle us from $11 million down to 0. Next year, what's it going to look like? The IMRF increase that we had to cover is still going to be there. The wage increases are still going to be there. We don't know what revenues are going to look like in the Property Tax Freeze Protection Fund. We used it all up this year. How much are we going to be able to put back into that for next year? Is there going to be $2 million like there was this year? I doubt it. So there's just a lot of things we need to be talking about a little bit more, and putting things out online, getting feedback from the public. I realize the public does not know too much about our process and how we arrive at our budget. And when we have an $11 million gap or a $7 million gap or a $1 million gap, the response often seems to be just cut, make more cuts, get rid of more employees, get rid of departments. live within your means. Everything I'm seeing shows that we're living within our means. The mandate study that we got a couple years ago, the update that Hansa gave us and what we've done since then. And I'm no financial wizard, but just from what I can see, there's not much more cutting we can do without taking an arm or a leg off. And I don't think anyone is going to vote for that. So another comment I hear, though, is there's money in funds. There's money in line items. There's a lot of fluff. There's a lot of stuff that is being hidden and kept from the public in some way. So I would like to, not challenge, but I'd like to make a suggestion to my colleagues here and to the public. If you think that there's some fluff in our budget, show us. Show us where the money's at. Because otherwise, next year, we're going to be looking much more seriously at a CPI increase, which is not something that really anybody wants. But we're going to, we were almost forced to possibly vote on it this year. So I'm concerned that next year, we're going to be looking at it straight in the face. As many of you know, I had an idea of splitting it up this year. If we think we're going to be going for a CPI increase, no matter what we do in the next year or two, let's start small at 1% and use a little bit less of the RTA money. We're not going to do that this year. I think option 3 is where everyone's leaning towards. But that's how close we are to potentially raising the taxes. We're here right now, and without that third option, we'd be having a much more difficult conversation right now. So hopefully going forward in the next year, us as county board members can become more active with our constituents in our districts, trying to get feedback from the public, trying to explain this information a little bit more, make it more understandable. Because even, among us, it's over our heads sometimes, and we have to really do our homework to just make sense of it. So anything that we can do to explain to the public, we're living within our means as far as we can tell. So if we're not, please show us where. We know people aren't completely afraid of raising the taxes because a couple years ago, the Forest Preserve put out a referendum, and it was voted overwhelmingly. And that's a raise in taxes, isn't it? So they just don't trust us. Let's try and build that trust so that if we do have that conversation next year where we have to raise the taxes, there's a lot more understanding on the part of the people thinking that, not thinking that we're just hiding the money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Any further comments? Mr. Copey.
Teresa and Jared, your point is very, very well taken. And I do sympathize, but, and inflation does march on, and it's certainly going to, you can see the writing's on the wall, there's no question about it. It's just the way the fiscal monetary policy of the United States and most of the free world works. And it's a constant expansion of the money and the flow thereof, and it does induce inflation. But my main point is as far as authorizing the RTA and the raising of the rate, we are in a little bit of a conundrum in that we had just passed the budget, the 12-step budget for the general fund, and to revert back to that, there would have to be an adjustment and a tax increase, I believe. Is that what I understand? If we were to consider Mrs. Barrero's 13% increase, that would be
we're beyond that. There was a motion, failed for a second, and so.
Okay.
Could you focus the
Okay. My point is just to chime in on the two discussions we just had, and that is our budget is passed. We need to seriously consider the fact that inflation is taking place on a daily basis, and we will definitely need to have to consider raising revenues one way or the other.
Thank you, Mr. Copey. Any final comment? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Okay, Ellen? Aye. Barrero? Yes. Davis?
Yes.
Raz?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Hernandez? Yes. Hoshite?
Yes.
Iqbal?
Yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Caius?
Yes.
Copey?
Yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Martin? Yes. Molina? Sanchez?
Yes.
Shefflo?
Yes.
Silva? Surges? Thomas? Weber? Wegman? Winnicke? Passes.
Okay, the resolution passes. I would like to thank Mr. Hoshite as chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee, all the members of the Finance Committee, all the members of the board, and the members of our staff, our employees, and then members of the public who participated in the process. Just several observations, open and transparent. I appreciate the comment that you made, Mr. Sanchez, about, I think what you were saying is that there's a cynicism, a skepticism on the part of the public about processes. You know, when they see what happens at national level, state level, they apply it to us at the local level. In contrast, I know you're well aware because you attend the meetings, that we have had 4 months of committee of the whole where it's all inclusive. Every person on the board representing all the people you represent have been invited to the meeting. For the most part, overwhelming majority have attended. So I appreciate those 4 months of work, all inclusive, the open and transparent. I'd like to recognize Mr. Hunt as the primary architect of the online real-time opengov.org, and now there's going to be a successor type of technology where every penny, the response to anybody who tells any of us that, there's money hidden somewhere. There's no money hidden nowhere. And by the way, I agree with you. If there is, let me know, because I'm not aware, and no one is aware of that because it doesn't exist. So, also, I want to thank Mr. Fonstock for his work with Terry, Mr. Onsick for the work, and then all the people who worked on that, putting everything online immediately, approximately 7 years ago when you first came. This is a budget that's respectful to taxpayers. We use some Midwestern common sense, creative solutions. Use what you have. I guess we could all become farmers, with that kind of frugal Mr. Kenyon. And then respectful to our staff and to each other. So thank you very much for your work. Next on the agenda is number 19364. May I have a motion and a second to discuss and approve? So moved by Mr. Fraz, seconded by Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Fraz.
Yeah, this resolution, this just amends the letter that we sent to our legislators in the state. This is in reference to the capital bill funds that we requested. Our original list that you all approved weighed very heavily on the Long Meadow Parkway project at $45 million. Reception of that has not been overwhelming, so we decided that we would make an amended list and add 17 projects to it, just in case they jump over Long Meadow there. So this is just an amended list of transportation projects. It adds 17 to our original submittal to the state.
Thank you, Mr. Fraz. Any further comment? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Allen. Guerrero. Davis. Fraz. Hanson. Hernandez. Hoshite. Iqbal. Kenyon. Caius. Hopi. Leonard. Martin. Molina. Sanchez. Shefflo. Silva. Surges. Thomas. Weber. Wegman. Winnicke. Passes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you for the support of getting our fair share. Resolution number 19365, may I have a motion and a second? So moved by Mr. Sanchez, second by Mr. Hanson. Discussion. Dr. Iqbal, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, I have 3 amendments to this resolution.
3 amendments?
3 amendments. They are apart.
Okay, if you'd speak up, because we got to listen and repeat.
Number 1 is a clarity. I think it's confusing whether it applies to the entire county or to incorporated area or unincorporated area. The way I see it, it only applies to incorporated areas. And it should say the same in the heading and in the text. I have marked it up. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, we can put it on the...
Of course. Thank you for your preparation. So the first one is clarification of this is the tax in this resolution applies only in incorporated. The answer is yes to that. I did confirm that yesterday thanks to some of the preliminary work that Dr. Iqbal had done. So, but the idea of including it in the language, that clarification in the title and in the body seems like it's straightforward. So this is the marked up copy. Okay. Okay, number 2.
Yeah. Anywhere it says in the county, it should say in the incorporated areas of the county.
Okay, so number 2 is in the incorporated. So that's another, it's like a cousin to the First Amendment. Is that right? Oh, that's the first. Okay. Okay, got it.
So
second? Let's see if we can handle it.
Yeah, number 2 is it puts the rate of 2.5%.
Okay, I understand. Good.
Gross receipts.
I understand. I apologize for the interruption, but you were right. We should handle these individually. Moved to amend this for clarification to include the word incorporated areas in the language of the resolution, in the title, in the summary, but most importantly, in the resolution. So moved by Dr. Iqbal, second by Mr. Leonard. Any further discussion on that? Sounds straightforward. Mr. Sheffler.
I'm just confused by it. I thought this was a Kane County sales tax level. Are we going to have 2 separate sales tax ordinances? Yes, okay.
Dr. Iqbal.
Yes, we have 2 resolutions going parallel. The second part, which would be unincorporated area, would be the next month. And that will have, actually there will be 2 resolutions. One is to opt out, and the second one is to keep it, but have a tax rate.
Because
it's only for incorporated areas, which are the municipalities.
When I first heard, frankly, I was confused when I first heard the idea, but thank you very much for bringing it forward. Did some research with staff members, and it's accurate, and so it is a clarification, helpful, constructive clarification. So any other comment? Ms. Wodnicki.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lawson. The ordinance 365, then is that basically saying we are opting out as the county? We agree to the tax, but we're opting out? I just want to clarify. I have read it. I've read it.
No, this is not the opt-out. This is the...
Specifically just to get the taxes that the county would receive.
Okay, that's my understanding.
Okay.
Correct? Oh, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you. Just for clarity, the resolution in front of you, we're not talking about the amendment, is the tax rate that would be charged to incorporated areas, municipalities within the county. Okay, we have not decided at the committee level. We voted against the resolution to opt out as a county.
No, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Okay. We're not talking about opting and opting out. That's not close to this. The idea is this is just what we're talking about on the First Amendment of 3, and then voting on this is it incorporated or unincorporated or both? The answer to that question is incorporated only. The answer to the question of what we're discussing, and I hope that we wouldn't descend into what's going to be a different discussion at some other point.
I just want to add, this is just a clarification. I just want to be sure, because at Development Committee, it was a little bit, the waters were a little bit muddy at Development Committee.
Understood.
So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wodnicki. Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, if not, clerk, call the roll.
It's a motion.
Correct.
Boscheit.
Yes.
Iqbal.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Caius. Copey. Leonard. Martin. Molina. Sanchez.
Yes.
Creflo.
Yes.
Silva. Sturgis.
Yes.
Thomas. Weber.
Yes.
Wegman. Wonecki. Okay, that passes.
Okay, so the clarification becomes part of the original resolution. So on number 2, Dr. Iqbal.
Yeah, this draft says that we will put a sales tax on the dispensaries in the municipalities at the rate of 2.5%. The amendment is to raise it up to 3%, which is allowed by the state.
Okay, so the proposal, correct me if I'm wrong, you're making an amendment to the resolution to change it from 2.5 to 3%. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? So moved by Mr. Leonard. Any discussion? Mr. Hanson. And then Mr.
Thank you. We talked about this a little bit at other committee levels. Again, committees I didn't serve on, but I appreciate them allowing me the time to explain my perspective as an Aurora resident. No matter where you stand personally within your own constitution for the state law that now says recreational cannabis is going to be legal, it's going to be used here in the county. There are 5 different types of licenses. You can be a cultivator, you can be a craft cultivator, you can be a infuser, you can be a transporter, and the one that seems to cause people the most consternation would be the licenses and the businesses that are dispensaries. A whole whopping 57 of them here in the state in the first round of awarded dispensaries. To opt out as a county for the non-incorporated areas, different discussion. But for today, this rate that we passed at 2.5% was based on advice from our state's attorney, based on the governor's office, and as an Aurora resident, again, Aurora, the city of, has 4 different counties that make up the city of Aurora. There's absolutely a fighting chance that should another county decide to charge less than the maximum rate of 3%, someone could set up camp, their new business, 1,000 feet away, 500 feet away across the street from Kane County, will receive no revenue, and the issues that may be causing concerns for our health department, for public security, for law enforcement are still there. Just because it's 1,000 feet away in Kendall County or 1,000 feet away in DuPage County doesn't mean that the problem's going to go away if you think there's going to be a problem. So that's why I encouraged, and we passed a resolution at 2.5%, less than the maximum rate, which we can always ratchet up over time. Okay, we're going from basically an illicit drug market to a regulated drug market, and I'd like to see that stabilized before we max out and possibly chase business away.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hanson. Any response, Dr. Iqbal, or to Mr. Sanchez?
Yes, sir. First of all, it's not up to the county where to place the dispensary. The final decision lies with the state. The second is the cost-benefit ratio. That analysis we have to do. The cost of law enforcement is very high. It's much higher than even 3%. But we are stuck with this state law that puts the burden on the local governments for these dispensaries. So we have to recoup the cost.
Understood.
And to say somebody wants to do it cheaper, let them do it. It would be their headache. Okay.
All right.
But
thank you.
But we will have marijuana everywhere. We will have some cost, and the state law allows some funds to be given to the police for that purpose. But for the cost of it, we have to have a police involvement, which there's no roadside test to see a person is impaired because of what. And there's a state attorney has to prosecute it. There's a public defender, the court, and there's a lot of expungement that will be coming in our way. So the cost is more than 3%. So we are limited to 3%. And that's what the state is saying. The state collects big tax, and we get the burden.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recommended 2.5%. It's kind of symbolic. Some people said it's really going to make a small difference on the retailer's end, maybe 50 cents on a $100 purchase. Part of my reasoning, though, is it was recommended to us. You got to understand, it's a Democratic bill that was pushed through for the cannabis legalization, and they're even telling us, don't go to the maximum. So when you have Democrats in Springfield saying don't tax it to the maximum, maybe listen a little bit. The other thing, though, really, is overall, to me, it at least signals the idea that we're trying to make it a little bit cheaper for the retailers so that we can take a little bit of business away from the black market. Because I think for a lot of the people that don't like cannabis and the effects that it has on society, the more we can have it in a well-regulated environment that is controlled by laws and not in the hands of people who don't check IDs, I'd say that's even better. So that's another suggestion I would recommend for keeping it at 2.5%, even if it seems symbolic to some.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Surgis, then Mr. Hanson for a second time.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of sales at all, but to Matt's point, and Jared, if it's 50 cents on a $100 per purchase, I don't think that's the math we're looking at. The math we're looking at is the ability to say, if I'm an investor creating a business that's going to cost me $500,000, $1 million to do, and I can do it on this side of the street and pay less, significantly less, or on that side of the street and pay significantly more in my taxes, I have to go to this side. So, getting zero of $100 is getting zero. So to Matt, I was 3% the whole time on this. In our conversations, you have convinced me that in your particular area in Aurora that's divided by several different counties, that we might need to be a little bit more competitive, looking at it, the big dollar picture of the investor, not the 50 cent purchase retail end of it, and I would need support for that.
Thank you, Mr. Surgis. Mr. Hanson, then Mr. O'Shea.
For 30 seconds, what I'm saying, the 2.5% versus 3%, 3% against the maximum, that's revenues, based on revenues of the company. This has nothing to do with buying 6 brownies or a little bit of something you want to take home or enjoy. This is revenues of that company. So that's why 0.5% is a big deal, or 4% is a big deal. So the retail tax comes from the state, and the retail tax we charge everything else. This 2.5% to 3% discussion is based on what that company brings in over the course of the years. That's why it's a bigger number than what we may spend on a given day while we do this, or being a cultivator, or a user, or anything else.
Understood. Mr. O'Shea.
I just wanted to say I agree with Mr. Surgis, and that's why I voted for the 2.5% at the committee meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Martin?
Well, I agree too, and I'm not saying anything new, but I want to mention the fact that we have not only a large population center close to a bunch of counties in the south, we have a large population center close to a bunch of counties in the north. So when we evaluate the ease of people to open up someplace else, we have a lot of county choices, and I agree that I support the 2.5%.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Sheffield.
I guess we're trying to flood Aurora with dispensaries. Thank you for that. Now maybe we're going to flood Elgin and Carpentersville too. I don't support the law. I don't support the tax. I'm going to vote no on all of it. This is a sales tax. It's not an income tax, correct? So this is paid by the buyer. So you think a buyer's going to drive leave Naperville and Orland Park or something and drive up to the west side of Aurora to save 50 cents on his marijuana purchase? Is that? Thank you.
Please make your statement. Okay. Understood. Other comments, questions? Okay, if not, let's see. On number 2, amendment number 2 by Dr. Iqbal, it is to raise the tax from the 2.5% that's in the original resolution to 3%. So clerk will call the roll.
Allen? No. Barrero? No. Davis? No. Braz? No. Hanson? No. Hernandez. Oshite. Iqbal.
Yes.
Kenyon.
No.
Caius.
Yes.
Kopi.
Yes.
Leonard.
Yes.
Martin.
No.
Molina. Sanchez.
No.
Shefflo.
No.
Silva. Surgis.
No.
Thomas.
Yes.
Weber.
No.
Wegman. And Winnicki. Fails.
Okay, motion fail, or the motion to amend number 2 fails, but number 3, Dr. Iqbal.
Well, number 3 goes back to the cost. The amendment is to designate any tax revenues that we raise and designate the public safety, which includes state attorney's office, public defender's office, the court, and the public health departments.
Okay, as I understand it, it's to earmark, amendment number 3 is to earmark all revenue that comes in from sales tax on marijuana to public safety.
Public safety, that's correct.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? So moved by Mr. Kopi, hand up first. Brief comments. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you again. It is a discussion that has to be had and quickly, regardless of what tax rate we settle on. It looks like we're going to settle on 3%. Where that money should go and how it should be allocated is important. And I think leaving out the health department and Director Jeffers, I think that would be unfair in this regard. I think this is a discussion for where this money should go, is not set up for a quick vote or a quick brief discussion today. Once we settle on a rate, I think it immediately should go back into the committee process to figure out where that money should go and how it should be allocated. Thank you.
All right, other comments or questions? Mr. Shefflo.
So can I just ask where, and Mr. Onzik is here, maybe under this current resolution, does this just go into our general fund?
Yes, I believe so. Correct? Sales tax? General fund, yes. Other questions, comments? Okay, if seeing none, the third amendment is to earmark any revenue to public safety. Period. Clerk will call the roll.
All right. Allen. No. Barrero. Yes. Davis.
No.
Raz.
No.
Hanson. Hernandez. No. Oshite.
Yes.
Iqbal.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Caius.
No.
Kopi. Leonard.
Yes.
Martin.
No.
Molina. Sanchez.
No.
Shefflo.
No.
Silva. Surgis.
No.
Thomas. Weber. Wegman. And Winnicki. It fails.
Okay, so the motion fails. Okay, so now we are discussing and voting on number 19-365 as amended by number 1, which was the clarification that this is incorporated areas only. Any further comment? Mr. Shefflo.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm going to vote against this. I do oppose the legalization. Sale of marijuana is illegal under federal law. We ought not be sanctioning it. We ought not be taxing it. I think we still don't know the effects in Colorado and California on the legalization. Our state's attorney, our sheriff, our health department, and our human resource director all have reservations that they've expressed publicly about the legalization. Just one example under this system, if I'm correct, our state has decided that it's got health benefits and it's got a recreational use, but a recreational user cannot grow plants in their house. So this is a plant, right? It's a weed. Is that true? Yeah. So, pardon me. So, So it's so healthful and recreational that I can't even grow one of these plants in my basement should I choose to do that. So what it really is we're trying to crowd out, and we've kind of heard this today, we're trying to crowd out the drug lords. But what we've done is we've created this restrictive regulatory framework, so much so that the state of Illinois is now just the new drug lord. They want the money, they're going to get the money, they're enticing us with the money, we want the money, I don't want the money.
Thank you, Mr. Scheffler. And remember, if there are any further comments or questions, clarifications, we are discussing a resolution that just establishes the sales tax at a 2.5%. We are not talking about opting in, opting out, the policy that the state has passed. None of that is what's before you right now. What's in front of you right now is what's the percent of tax. So with that, Mr. Surges.
I just wanted to comment that, Mo, I am absolutely in favor of the spirit of what you just tried to do in terms of where the money should be directed. And I appreciate you bringing up that we may have left the department or two up. And I would encourage us to immediately bring this back to the committee should this move forward to clarify that. But you were absolutely on the right track.
And to build on that, just for the future, and it's not easy to have all your thoughts marshaled early enough, but we have had a bit of time on this. To make amendments and to bring these forward at a full board meeting is time-consuming, and when we come to the board, it should be final business. And so, first of all, I want to express my respect and appreciation for what Dr. Iqbal has done on this specific issue. However, I would encourage all of us to try to come in earlier in the process so that we can clarify these in committee and in preliminary committees before we come to the board as a whole. But I understand the diligence that's gone into this. So I saw a hand. I think, was it Ms. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I know the hour is running long. I just want to applaud my colleague, Mr. Scheffler, for going on the record. And I know it's not a debate before us right now, but to Mr. Sanchez's point about the public not really necessarily being aware a lot of times of what is going on, the details behind the process we go through. This is the meeting that a lot of residents pay attention to. I mean, there's so many committee meetings, they're hard to follow. And so it's important that we get up and express ourselves and go on the record. Quite frankly, I'm kind of with Mr. Scheffler, but this is the first opportunity for us to receive revenue from a new source that that residents have some control over. This is a user fee, basically. And so until someone gets up and says, yes, I believe we have to increase the CPI, we would be negligent, I believe, in not imposing or accepting the sale of cannabis in our county. And so I applaud us as a group. I appreciate that we are being responsible regardless of where we stand on this as a moral question. But in terms of what we have to do as a public body, I'm glad that we have let reasonable and common sense prevail.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Any final comment? If not, the motion before you in the second is on number 19-365 as amended by Dr. Iqbal's number 1. Clerk, call the roll.
Ellen? Guerrero? Yes. Davis?
Sorry, one more time, this amendment, which one?
It was the clarification that it's only incorporated area. This is the sales tax for only incorporated area at 2.5%.
Yes.
Fries? Yes. Hanson? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. O'Shea? Yes. Iqbal? Yes. Kenyon? Yes. Caius? Yes. Copey? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Martin?
Yes.
Molina? Yes. Sanchez?
Yes.
Scheffler?
No.
Silva? Yes. Surges?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Wegman? Yes. Winicki?
Yes.
Passes.
So motion passes. May I have a motion and a second to go into a brief executive session to discuss update potential litigation? So moved by Mr. Surgis, second by Mr. Hoshite. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it.